So we'll give it about 10 seconds to allow guests to join. Okay, well, good afternoon and welcome to the Hawaii Medical Board. My name is Alani Kiyoki and I'm the Executive Officer of the board. I have with me the second Executive Officer of the board, Randy Ho. Welcome to the hybrid meeting. Before the meeting is called to order, we will play a short video to explain procedures for this virtual meeting and how members of the public can participate and interact with the board during the meeting.
Welcome to the Professional and Vocational Licensing Virtual Board Meeting.
When the meeting begins momentarily, the chair will take a roll call, explain any specific rules for this particular board, and then move to public comment. The name of the board member will appear on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. For instance, this is board member Y, and this is board member E. Public testimony will be accepted at the beginning of the meeting and before each agenda item. You can indicate that you are ready to testify by clicking on the Raise Hand button being circled by the mouse on your screen now. At the appropriate time, the board will recognize you to speak and ask you to unmute your mic as shown here. Again, public testimony will be accepted at the beginning of the meeting and before each agenda item. Public attendees will not be able to unmute their microphone until recognized by the board. Public attendees who are recognized to testify will be asked to identify themselves by name and their affiliated organization if applicable. Please mute your microphone when you are finished speaking as a courtesy to others and members of the board. Public attendees will not be able to unmute themselves after the testimony is completed unless recognized again after raising their hand. At some point during the meeting, the board may choose to move into executive session. When the board moves into executive session, the board members' microphones and video feeds will be turned off, and a similar screen as you see now will be displayed. When the board returns from executive session, their microphones will be turned on as well as their video cameras.
Welcome again to the Professional and Vocational Licensing Virtual Board Meeting.
At this time, the chair will call the meeting to order and take a roll call, as well as explain any additional rules that may be specific to this board.
So the meeting will now come to order. Please note that to view the meeting and provide live oral testimony, I just want to reemphasize that please use the link at the top of your agenda. You'll be asked to enter your name, and the board requests that you enter your full name. But you may use a pseudonym or other identifier if you wish to remain anonymous. You will also be asked for an email address, and you may fill in this field with an entry in an email format. For example, your username followed by the @ and the email domain. That is usually in a form email.com. Your microphone will be automatically muted, and when the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may click the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen to indicate that you wish to testify about that particular agenda item. The chairperson will individually enable each testifier to unmute their microphone. When recognized by the chairperson, please unmute your microphone before speaking and mute your microphone after you finish speaking. As far as phone access, if you cannot access internet, you may get audio-only access by calling the Zoom phone number that's listed on the top of the agenda. Upon dialing the number, you will be prompted to enter the meeting ID, which is also listed at the top of the agenda. After entering the meeting ID, you will be asked to either enter your panelist number or wait to be admitted into the meeting. You will not have a panelist number, so please wait until you are admitted into the meeting. When the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may indicate you want to testify by entering the star sign and then the number 9 on your phone's keypad. After entering the star sign and then 9, a voice prompt will let you know that the host of the meeting has been notified. When recognized by the chairperson, you may unmute yourself by pressing the star sign and then the number 6 on your phone. A voice prompt will let you know that you are unmuted. Once you are finished speaking, please enter the star sign followed by the number 6 again to mute yourself. For both for both internet and phone access, when testifying, you'll be asked to identify yourself and the organization, if any, that you represent. Each testifier will be limited to 5 minutes of testimony per agenda item. If connection to the meeting is lost for more than 30 minutes, the meeting will be continued on a specified date and time. This information will be provided on the board's website. Instructions to attend the State of Hawaii virtual board meetings may be found online, again, at the board's website. So again, we're calling the meeting to order, and I will call members by name one by one. Please indicate if you are present for the record, and if you are alone in the locale from which you are accessing this meeting virtually. So I'm Danny Takanishi, Oahu member, chairperson. I'm present and alone. Mr. Gary Belcher.
Present and alone.
Dr. Franklin Dowell.
Present and alone.
Dr. Michael Jaffe.
Present and alone.
Dr. Elizabeth Ignacio.
Present and alone.
Mr. Wesley Munn.
Present and alone.
Dr. Rebecca Sawai.
Present and alone.
Okay, and I believe that those are all of the members. Okay, so before.
Pratt.
Dr. Young is present.
I'm sorry, did I forget?
Dr.
Dr. Angela Pratt, how could I forget that? I apologize.
Problem. Present and alone.
Thank you.
And Dr. Young is physically present in the meeting room.
Present in the meeting room.
Okay. Okay.
Hi.
I see you now, Dr. Young. Okay, thank you very much. All right. So before I begin with the first order of business, which is the approval of the minutes, is there any public testimony?
Thank you, Chair. This is Johnny. We do not have anyone requesting to provide testimony.
Okay, thank you very much, Johnny. All right, so the first order of business is, and I think because there are different sets of minutes that I'd like to take them separately. So if I could entertain a motion to approve the executive session minutes of the September 14th, 2023 meeting.
With corrections.
With corrections.
So if I can refer the board to page 6 of your packet, the executive session meeting minutes. The section should reference HRS section 453-4, B number 1 instead of number 12. And then page 8 of the executive session meeting minutes. The citation should read HAR section 16-85-112, number 3 instead of number 12.
Okay. Any other corrections?
Mike Jaffe, move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Jaffe. Is there a second?
Second, Frank.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dowell. Any further discussion? All right, if I can see by a show of hands, all those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay. It being unanimous, I will not take individual roll call. Now, if I can entertain a motion for approval of the open session minutes of the December 14, 2023 meeting.
Dr. Young raised her hand.
I was.
Oh, you
I wasn't
weren't present?
here, so I need to abstain from that.
So anyone
Nope.
can make a motion.
Belcher, motion to approve the open session minutes from December 14th.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Second.
Belcher. Is there a second?
1 second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Munn. Any further discussion?
Dr. Young is abstaining from the vote, so.
I was aware of that, but I'm asking for discussion at this time. Any further discussion? Okay, and as Dr. Young had indicated that she's abstained, I will take individual roll call. So the motion on the floor is to accept the minutes of the December 14, 2023 meeting. And so Mr. Belcher,
Yes.
Dr. Dow,
Yes.
Dr. Jaffe,
Yes.
Dr. Ignacio,
Yes.
Mr. Munn,
Yes.
Dr. Pratt,
Yes.
Dr. Sawai.
Yes.
Okay, and then the minutes will indicate that Dr. Jerry Young has abstained. All right, so now if I can, I'd like to enter into a judicatory session. And so if you would mute and turn your videos off in Zoom, and we'll reconvene in Microsoft Teams. Right, so we are back in open session. I'm just going to take a quick roll call, just to be sure and to affirm quorum. So I'm Danny Takanishi. I'm present and alone. Mr. Gary Belcher,
Present and alone.
Dr. Franklin Dow,
Present and alone.
Dr. Michael Jaffe,
Present and alone.
Dr. Elizabeth Ignacio,
Present and alone.
Mr. Wesley Munn,
Present and alone.
Dr. Angela Pratt,
Present and alone.
Dr. Rebecca Sawai,
Present and alone.
and Dr. Jerry Young. Okay. All right, I can see you there in the Queen Leo Kalani conference room. All right, so just to announce what the board did as we recessed into adjudicatory session on the matter of the physician's license of Laura E. Purdy, the board had approved the settlement agreement. On the matter of the physician's license of Dr. Jorge Cimental, the board approved the settlement agreement. And in the matter of the license of Dr. Scott Smith, the board approved the settlement agreement. Is there any public comment?
Thank you, Chair. No one wish to provide testimony at this time.
Okay, thank you. So if I can entertain a motion now to go into executive session.
This is Frank. I move to go back into executive session at this point.
Okay, moved by Dr. Dow. Is there a second?
Jaffe, second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, it being unanimous, we will mute and turn our videos off and reconvene in Teams.
Hello, Dr. Parham. I sent you a link to join the executive session. Please join it as soon as you can.
Right, so we're back in open session. I'm just going to take a quick roll call. Just let me know that you're present for the purposes of the minutes. I'm Danny Takanishi, Oahu member present. Mr. Gary Belcher,
Present.
Dr. Franklin Dow,
Present.
Dr. Michael Jaffe,
Present.
Dr. Elizabeth Ignacio,
Present.
Mr. Wesley Munn,
Present.
Dr. Angela Pratt,
Present.
Dr. Rebecca Sawai,
Present.
Dr. Jerry Young. Okay, I can see Dr. Young there in the Queen Liliuokalani conference room.
Present.
So before I go on, is there any public testimony?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have anyone requesting to provide testimony.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. So we're going to move on to the applications now. If I can entertain a motion on the application of Dr. Robert Demuth.
This is Dr. Young. I move to approve the application by endorsement for Dr. Robert Demuth with
Okay.
a non-disciplinary letter of education to remain professional in all settings.
Okay, so the motion has been made. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Frank.
Belcher, second.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dow and Mr. Belcher. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of that motion, please raise your hands. Okay, it is unanimous, so I will not do a roll call. And then for the physicians for permanent non-endorsement applications for licensure, on the application of Dr. Samir Haddad, if I can entertain a motion.
This is Dr. Jaffe. I move to deny licensure for Dr. Samir Haddad based on the Hawaii Revised Statutes 436B 19, 7, 9, 12, and 13, 453-8, 7, 9, 11, and C, and Hawaii Administrative Rules 16-85-107, 1, 2, 3. And yes.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Chair, I apologize. The AME Principles of Medical Ethics.
Oh, 2 and 3. Thank you.
Okay, so with that amendment, is there a second to that motion?
So I second.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sawai. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. Okay, that being unanimous, I will not take a roll call. On the application for endorsement, actually on the application of Dr. Parham for sponsorship for USMLE Step 3, if I can entertain a motion.
This is Gary Belcher. I'd like to make a motion that we approve Hawaii Medical Board sponsorship for Dr. Parham to take step 3.
Is there a second to that motion?
Dr. Jaffe, second.
Okay, any further discussion? Dr. Sawai?
I would vote to not approve.
Okay, so the motion on the floor moved in second is to approve. So procedurally, we would vote on that, and depending on where that the outcome, we may or may not entertain a second motion. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. So all those in favor of the motion, which is sponsorship to take USMLE Step 3 on the application packet of Dr. Parham, that is the motion on the floor. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, so it's not unanimous, so I will do a roll call. So myself, Danny Takanishi, Oahu member, I vote nay. Mr. Gary Belcher.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Franklin Dow.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Michael Jaffe.
I vote yes.
Okay. Dr. Elizabeth Ignacio.
No.
Okay. Mr. Wesley Munn.
No.
Okay. Dr. Angela Pratt.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Rebecca Sawai.
No.
Okay. Dr. Jerry Young.
Yes.
Okay. So question to our executive officer.
Yes, the motion fell to carry.
Okay. Okay, so can I have a second motion? Can I have another motion on the matter of sponsorship for Dr. Parham to take USMLE step 3? Dr. Swai?
I move to not approve. Can I make that motion?
Yes. Is there a second to that motion?
Munn second the motion.
It's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all those, I'll take a roll call on this one. So the motion on the floor is to deny the request for sponsorship for USMLE step 3. So myself, Danny Takanishi, Oahu member, I vote no. Mr. Belcher?
We're voting to not approve.
The motion on the floor is to deny the request for sponsorship to take USMLE step 3.
So do you
I-
support the
No, so
motion?
that, pardon
No,
me?
I don't.
You
I vote
contradicted
no.
yourself.
Yeah. You voted no, Dr. Takanishi.
So the first motion, Alani, correct me, did you say that the motion did not pass?
It did not. So the first motion was to approve his sponsorship.
Mm-hmm.
We had in support of the motion, Mr. Belcher, Dr. Dow, Dr. Jaffe, Dr. Pratt, and Dr. Young. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You need minimum of 6 to have any motion carry.
Mm-hmm.
The second motion on the floor is to deny the request for sponsorship.
Yes, and so for that one, Mr. Belcher, Danny Takanishi, Oahu member, I vote yes to deny. Okay, Mr. Belcher?
No.
Okay. Dr. Dow?
No.
Okay. Dr. Jaffe?
No.
Okay. Dr. Ignacio?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Munn?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Angela Pratt?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Dr. Sawai?
Yes.
Okay. And Dr. Young?
No.
Okay. All right. Alani, did you keep track of the votes? I just want to corroborate what I got.
I did. So in support of the motion to deny, or whoever voted yes was Dr. Takanishi, Dr. Ignacio, Mr. Munn, Dr. Pratt, Dr. Sawai. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion fell to carry.
Okay. All right. Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
Sure thing. Let me close the door. Or
May I have a motion to go into executive session?
I move to
Belcher
go into
moved that we
executive
go into
session.
executive session.
Okay, so I'll take it that Belcher moves and Dow seconds. Can I have a show of hands? All those in favor of going into executive session, please raise your hand. Okay, that being unanimous, we will mute and turn our videos off in Zoom and reconvene in Teams. Okay, we're back in open session and I'm gonna take a roll call. Danny Takanishi, that's myself, Oahu member, I'm present. Mr. Gary Belcher,
Present.
Dr. Franklin Dow,
Present.
Dr. Michael Jaffe,
Present.
Dr. Elizabeth Ignacio,
Present.
Mr. Wesley Munn,
Present.
Dr. Angela Pratt,
Present.
Dr. Rebecca Sawai,
Present.
and Dr. Jerry Young.
Present.
Okay, thank you. So we're gonna move on. So on the application for well, the requests for extension of the application on the matter of Dr. Rodney Canetti, I move to deny the request for an extension of his application. Is there a second?
Belcher, second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Belcher. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, I can see, yep, it's unanimous, so I will not take a roll vote. Okay, on the application of physician assistant Sarah Newman, if I can entertain a motion.
Sorry, this is Sawai. I move to approve the application.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, there being none, all those in favor of the motion on the floor, please raise your hand. So it carries unanimously. So moving on, if I can entertain a motion to approve the ratification list in front of you.
Ignacio, so moved.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Frank.
Okay, seconded by Dr. Dow. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, so it carries unanimously. All right, so moving on to the agenda item number 5, legislative liaisons. I'd like to turn this over to our executive officer, Alani Kioki. Did you want to provide any comments on that?
Sure, I'm just requesting that the board appoint a minimum of 2 legislative liaisons to testify if needed on behalf of the board. And for me to reach out to the members to discuss any legislation that are scheduled for hearings. So if you recall, I worked directly with Dr. Takanishi last year and Dr. Sawai. So I reached out to them regarding positions. I reached out to them to testify. Don't worry, I'll be testifying on 99.9% of the bills on your behalf. But in the event I can't speak to a bill, I'd appreciate if one of you all would testify on behalf of the board.
Any thoughts, comments from the board? Dr. Swai?
I did not find this position onerous last year. I'd be happy to serve again this year if required, or if the board approves.
I don't think that would be a question. All right. And certainly, of course, I'm always available to help out. So Dr. Jaffe, did you have your hand up?
I'm also interested if you need my assistance for that task.
Okay, all right. I see Dr. Ignacio, you nodding your head too, and is that a volunteerism or?
I'm not sure. I guess my question would be, is that appropriate? I thought maybe there would be a conflict given my role with the medical association, the advocacy role of the medical association. I'm always available to help but I just didn't know.
Okay, I think sometimes it might be a challenge to sort of, on the visuals or, sometimes, lawmakers or other stakeholders who might be present to make the separation. But I think, certainly if there's things that do come up within the process, we'll always make sure that we reach out. And I think too, historically, there have been bills that, the board, in essence, has worked in collaboration with the Hawaii Medical Association and actually other units. For example, the Interstate Medical Compact, there are a number of medical centers that provided their assistance in advocacy to make sure that that bill passed. So, because I think at heart, we all have the same mission, right? It's really the patients and public safety. Okay. All right, thanks. So Lonnie, did this need to be an action item, or I think we can just look at a volunteerism, right?
Yeah, I'd say you can just volunteer.
Okay,
I don't
all
think
right.
you have to.
Okay, so moving right on, 5B for legislation. Attached list of bills. So would you like me to read them?
Randy can.
Would somebody from the executive office be willing to do that for us?
We will do that. So Randy will read the bill number, the measure title, as well as the measure description, and then the board can take a position if they'd like to.
All right, I will begin if everyone is ready. Bill SB 8. The measure title is the report title, measure title.
Measure title.
Measure title is relating to administrative rules, and the description requires all state agencies adopting, amending, or repealing a rule to make the full text of the rules of the agency available on the website of the Office of the Lieutenant Governor in a digitally accessible and searchable format.
So this measure is being brought to the board for informational purposes. As you are all well aware, we've had an administrative rule package that we've been working on for years. So we would need to ensure that we meet these requirements if this bill is enacted. So this is, again, just for informational purposes. I'd recommend that you track this measure.
And then I guess the question for, point of order, do you want us to take these as action items and actually vote?
For measures that you are going to support, oppose, or appreciate the intent, an actual vote needs to occur.
Okay, because this would be, to me, just a track.
Okay.
Right.
As the majority of them are.
Yep.
All right, informed consent, Randy.
All right, SB 17, relating to medical informed consent. Requires the Hawaii Medical Board to establish standards for healthcare providers to ensure that a patient's consent to treatment is an informed consent. Requires that informed consent for a proposed medical or surgical treatment or a diagnostic or therapeutic procedure shall be obtained prior to the day of that treatment or procedure. Specifies that if the treatment or procedure is to occur on the same day it is scheduled, the informed consent shall be obtained at the time the decision is made to schedule that treatment or procedure.
So for the board's information, as you may recall, the board submitted testimony appreciating the intent of the measure, but providing comments. If you recall that your administrative rules, specifically subchapter 4, has a provision regarding informed consent. That provision is very general. It provides the guidelines for informed consent, but does not go into detail. That is the responsibility of the physician specialty to detail or outline what should go into informed consent. Would you like to continue to provide comments on this measure?
Speaking for the board, and please correct me, my sense is that would be the case. I think the other challenge for this is that the board really has no way of actually monitoring this unless someone reports.
That's correct.
So I think, so on this one, let me take it as an action item. Would the board members be in favor of appreciating the intent of the bill, but the board would still want to have the opportunity to track and to provide commentary? Okay. So shall we take that as a motion? Is there a second? Okay, I see Dr. Okay, I saw Dr. Pratt's hand go up. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, it carries unanimously. All right, psychiatric care on the neighbor islands, Randy.
We have SB 60 relating to health, authorizes state licensed and credentialed physicians, advanced practice registered nurses, and physician assistants who are not physically in the state to issue prescriptions for certain controlled substances under a limited circumstance. Authorizes pharmacies to dispense the prescriptions, sorry.
So this measure amends HRS or Chapter 329, the Controlled Substance Act. In the past, the board deferred to the Department of Public Safety Narcotics Enforcement Division with regard to any measures that amend 329 directly. Would you like to remain with that? Be consistent with that?
That would make the most sense.
Okay, so I will monitor this on behalf of the board. Yep. Excellent.
SB 60, relating to associate physicians. Creates a new category of professional licensure for associate physicians, which are recent medical school graduates who have passed certain medical exams but have not been placed into a residency program and who work under the supervision of a licensed physician to provide primary care in medically underserved areas. Prescribes the scope of practice of associate physicians. Creates requirements for collaborative practice agreements between associate physicians and collaborating physicians. Authorizes associate physicians to prescribe certain controlled substances.
So not to lead the witness, but just to expedite this, just to start conversation. To me, this would seem one where, again, that we would appreciate the intent of the bill, but that it would make the most sense for the board to track it with the opportunity to provide comments. My understanding is this bill didn't even get out of committee. It wasn't even heard in committee last year.
No, it wasn't. And I believe the board's comments last year were again what Chair Takanishi indicated, appreciates the intent, but the way the bill was drafted itself, there were specific concerns. I can pull those meeting minutes for the board's review at your February 8th meeting, but there were concerns with the draft of the bill.
Okay, so do you need a vote on that?
You can do it, I guess, by acclamation. Is that what you usually do?
Because I think I saw heads nodding, so I think there's consensus on that one. And it's not really an oppose or a support, which I think is important that we vote on.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Brandy, moving right along.
SB 62, SD2, HD1. Relating to medical education and training. Reestablishes the Hawaii Medical Education Special Fund, appropriates funds into and out of the Hawaii Medical Education Special Fund to the John A. Burns School of Medicine for graduate medical education and training programs, to create more residencies and training opportunities on the neighbor islands for medical students, and for medical student and residency training opportunities in partnership with the United States Department of Veteran Affairs. I'm not sure how to read that last part, effective.
You don't.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay.
So this one, because it involves the medical school, I have a conflict of interest, so I'm going to recuse making any statements on this. So maybe Mr. Belcher, if you can lead any discussions on this.
Well, we did cover a bill like this last year, and I mean, I would support it based upon the information that we have. If you think that's wise, Alani, or appreciate intent and follow. Track.
Yeah, we can appreciate the intent and track the measure. Because this bill would be carried out by not only the John A. Burns School of Medicine, but I believe the Department of Health. They're going to implement the measures. We'd have to defer to them if this is not a part of their priorities or their package. Then again, appreciating the intent of something is as far as you can.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll kind of track.
Right,
Any other
moving on.
comment on this? Okay, Randy.
I don't see anyone's hands raised.
All right. SB 131. Relating to female genital mutilation. Establishes the Class B felony offense of prohibited acts related to female genital mutilation. Requires prosecuting attorneys of the respective counties to keep annual statistics on cases involving prohibited acts related to female genital mutilation. Requires the administrator of the Hawaii Criminal Justice Data Center to annually compile and report these county statistics to the legislature. Establishes mandatory reporting requirements for ongoing or suspected cases of prohibited acts related to female genital mutilation. Appropriates funds.
Thoughts on the board? Should this one be a track?
I think everyone knows how I feel about this. I think it should be a no. What they need to do is put in for minors, and that would settle the problem, but that's not what it says.
I would also support Dr. Jaffe's statement.
I also support Dr. Jaffe's statement.
Okay, shall we, so the motion I'll put on the floor is I think that we should, the board should track this bill. Is there a second? We'll do it parliamentary process.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Dr. Sawai. Any further discussion? All right, by a show of hands, all those in favor, raise your hands, and the motion is to just track. Okay, so we will take a roll call. So Danny, Takanishi, myself, I vote in favor of the motion. Yes. Mr. Belcher?
Yes.
The motion is to track only. Okay, Dr. Dao?
No.
Okay, Dr. Jaffe?
No.
Dr. Ignacio?
Yes.
Mr. Munn?
Yes.
I'm sorry, you muted, Mr. Munn.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Pratt?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Sawai?
Yes.
Okay. And Dr. Jerry Young?
Yes.
Okay. Did I miss anybody?
No.
Okay. So Alani, did that
Motion
carry? Okay. All right. Thank you. Randy?
SB 169 relating to health. Requires Medicaid and private insurance coverage of ambulance services. Authorizes Medicaid programs and requires private insurers to cover community paramedicine services rendered statewide by emergency medical technicians or paramedics. Appropriates funds.
So this measure is before you for informational purposes only. And the reason being is you regulate the practice of emergency medical services. You license those individuals. But this again amends the insurance code as well as other codes. So I would recommend that you track this measure.
Yeah, this is not a medical regulation piece. So just by a show of nods, is everyone fine with just tracking this measure if it comes through? Okay, Mr. Belfield, a comment?
No, I'm just in favor of tracking. Thought we were voting.
Oh, all right. Okay, thanks. Moving right along.
SB 233 relating to public testimony at open meetings. Specifies that boards subject to the open meetings law shall allow oral testimony on any agenda item at the beginning of the board's agenda or meeting, provided that oral testimony shall not be limited to the beginning of a board's agenda. Specifies an exception for the legislative body of each county.
So this is again, just informational purposes. You guys, if this is enacted, would have to adhere to this law.
It sounds like a track.
Yeah.
we give, we always ask for public testimony. Okay. All right, Randy?
SB 254, relating to the termination of pregnancy. Prohibits the abortion of a fetus that is capable of feeling pain, prohibits abortions by dismemberment, provides certain exceptions, establishes penalties.
It sounds like a track. Did we provide testimony on this one last year, Alani?
We did not. It wasn't heard either.
If there's any comments, please raise your hands. All right, moving right on, Randy.
I'm sorry, Dr. Takanishi, I have
sure.
a question.
Sure.
I have a question. So being how this is my first rodeo at this with this lens, I'm kind of inclined to look more on the tracking area of it, because I'm assuming that these are bills that are looked at very closely, and that a lot of it is going to get teased out by the experts and keeping us, the board, from being so vocal on it. Am I on track with thinking that way? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I'm passionate about the abortion. I am passionate about the female mutilation, but I also think, that we're not talking about somebody getting a 14-year-old getting mutilated and they want to charge that as a felony. I get that. That should happen. But I'm talking about, cosmetic gynecology. I mean, there's so many avenues. So I'm sitting in this chair thinking that I should take a more passive role and track these more, so that more things come up, so that we can, as a board, make further statements. So I just want to make sure, as a new member here, that I'm kind of looking at it through the right lens.
Yeah, no, and that is correct. And the thing is, a number of us wear a number of different hats, but the context is the critical piece. So the context is, well, we're all here. We're members of the Hawaii Medical Board, and the law, or the statutes and the administrative rules, are what governs the approach that we take in this particular context. But again, there are a multiplicity of different contexts that we're in. We just have to make sure we mind the conflicts. So as a public, as a citizen, we're free to comment on all of these, so long as within our commentary or testimony, we don't say that, oh, I'm so-and-so, and oh, by the way, I'm on the Hawaii Medical Board, and then give the testimony. The testimony is as a private citizen, for example, or as a representative of another organization that maybe involves women's health or pediatric advocacy. But you're absolutely right. Ours is governed in terms of our role by state statutes, and ours is a medical regulatory and licensure piece. And so the bills that come about that have something to do with the role of the board, that would be where we, especially if it references the board directly, that would be where this entity would be much more inclined to take a support versus an oppose, and actively provide testimony. So you're correct.
Thank you.
No, Dr. Jaffe?
I guess my question, though, if the legislature is coming to a group of physicians and asking us to weigh in on medical issues, we are somewhat of the experts, and not just seeing ourselves as private citizens, because they would like us to weigh in on medical safety. So I somewhat disagree with you a little bit, that I think we should stick our neck out when we see something that is egregious and can harm the public, that we should make a statement. That's how I feel about it.
And again, I respect your opinion, but again, what we do statutorily is governed by statutes, and ours are not to exist as consultants in the line of what constitutes, medical care in any particular specialty, because by nature of how the board is constructed, we come from all different specialties, inclusive of public members. And so really our role is that we depend in that light on the peer review concept of others. So hospital credential verification service, for example, residency program director's certification. And our peer review, so to speak, is to look at all of those data points within the framework of medical regulation and licensure. But ours is not to render the judgment as to what constituted, standard practice in the community, for example. That's not the role of the medical board per se, if you look at our statute. So that's like I said, your point's well taken. I respect your points, but again, the board walks a narrow path based on law. Shari, you can chime in anytime if you disagree or there's something you feel that you need to clarify, please do.
I agree, Johnny.
Okay, all right, so moving along.
SB 262 SD1 HD1 relating to medical residency programs. Appropriates monies to support and expand physician residency training programs in state teaching hospitals.
Okay, so Gary, will you conduct this one? I'm also, for the record, I'm recusing myself from any comments.
Based upon the last bill that addressed medical education and training, I would suggest that we track this. Alani?
That is what the board has done in the past.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from anyone else?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, Randy, want to move on to the next one?
SB 266 relating to children. Requires medically appropriate and reasonable life-saving and life-sustaining medical care and treatment for all born alive infants. Establishes civil and criminal penalties.
Okay, sounds like a track.
Okay.
Danny, this is Frank.
Dr. Dahl.
Is it truly a track? I know I'm putting my views in this as well, but this is a very vague statement that requires all living, or I guess all life, medically appropriate, reasonable life-saving and life-sustaining care and treatment for all born alive infants. If it's an 18-weeker, I mean, that's not very, I don't know. I'm just asking you guys this because this is actually very vague, and it puts us in a very precarious position, not only for ourselves, but for the hospital too.
Well, the hospital, again, and for us as individuals, is really, I mean, I hate to sound this way, but it's really less of the priority. It's really our role in medical regulation and licensure. Now, had you said that if you look at Section 5 professional disciplinary action, and it talks about the licensure of a physician, then that would be, to me, the reason to look at, again, tracking, but, having the ability to provide testimony. But it would really be on that particular component of the bill that has to do with the license of a physician. But really, the other parts are technically not part of what a decision would be. And if you think about it, right, the board, in some jurisdictions, the board actually does judge and jury. We don't. It's separated. By law, there's RICO. So RICO does all the investigatory, the hearings, right? The guilty, the innocent until proven guilty. The board doesn't do that, but there are a few boards nationally that they actually will do the investigation and render the decision. But ours is not set that way because RICO does that part. And then they deliver to us what their final order and recommendation is, and we either approve or we deny and send it back. So that's our scope. It's pretty narrow.
Okay.
So Danny,
I'm too trying to wrap my head around it. I admit I'm trying to wrap, I'm sorry to interrupt. I should have asked.
No, go ahead, Dr. Pratt.
No, I too finding I feel a little difficult wrapping my head around it too, because, I feel kind of schizophrenic about it a little bit, like we should be passionate about it, but yet knowing our scope and, these are highly emotional charged, issues, and we're all sit on this board and we're all accountable to it, our personal or our professional bias, whatever they may be. So I appreciate the discussion on it back and forth because it's helping me to process my role. So thank you.
And I think the other way to look at it is, for the lack of choice of better words, the board is supposed to be a little bit more, if you will, even if we make decisions, neutral in the political context, meaning that the board shouldn't be in a position where things are politicized, I guess. And we all have our passions, and I'll admit there's a number of things you guys said that I completely agree with. But again, our role is really to walk what the law says that's within the jurisdiction of the board. And part of it too is, maybe I remember that session where the chair of consumer protection did state that if the board doesn't work within its constraints under law, that she would have moved to annul the board. And she was pretty senior, so she probably had enough clout that she probably could have done that. And at one point, like I said, it was a pretty serious discussion at that testimony. So so that was a reminder for me. And so that's where we kind of are. Other thoughts? I mean, this is a rich discussion, is really important. Because like I said, we all wear different hats and we all have our passions. I mean, we're doctors, right? And we're public members at heart, right? So we don't want anybody harmed. But that aside, again, the board has a path that's carved out in law. We're not an advocacy group, basically. Ours is not advocacy, it's regulation. Other thoughts? Do we need to take a vote on this?
So Chair, if I may point
Yes.
out, which you already did, page 10, section 5 of the bill, line 7 through 15. The board can take a position on that because it directly involves your duties and responsibilities. And then section 3 of the bill, page 11. So I believe based on those two sections, the board previously indicated that they had concerns with these sections of the bill.
Okay, so Dr. Dow, we're now full circle, but that would be the two pieces that to me I had flagged. But again, I think it's important to hear everybody, and I want everybody to feel like they're heard, because this is how we have we help to have a collective understanding of what our role is, irrespective of what our passions are. Okay, so with that, coming full circle, shall we say that we would track this bill and want to make sure we have opportunity to provide testimony specifically within those two narrow realms that our executive officer brought forth? Okay. Shall we just take a straw vote, Alani? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, so I think it's a majority. Okay, so we'll move on.
All right, SB 298 SD1 HD1 relating to the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. Authorizes the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency to acquire any real, personal, or mixed property for immediate or future use, own, hold, improve, rehabilitate, sell, assign, exchange, transfer, convey, lease, or dispose of any real, personal, or mixed property acquired and acquired by condemnation, real property for immediate or future use. Amends the definition of public lands to exclude non-ceded lands to which the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency holds title.
For example, I also have feelings about this one, but again, this is not a board jurisdiction bill.
So at the February 8th meeting, if the board members agree, I will remove it from your list of measures to track.
Yeah, but I mean, and again, the words here is own. for future use, so it's an interesting bill, but again, it's not within the board's jurisdiction. So shall we go with that, that suggestion for executive officer? Is everyone okay with that? Okay, I see everyone nodding. Okay, Randy, we'll move ahead.
SB 319 SD1, relating to the recognition of emergency medical services personnel licensure interstate compact. Establishes a working group to study the feasibility and effects of the state adopting the recognition of emergency medical services personnel licensure interstate compact. Requires a report to the legislature. Effective 12/31/2050.
So remember last year, the one for physicians passed, the one that is on our agenda to look for one more commissioner from this board. This is for emergency medical services personnel. Okay, so this is like sort of like a separate piece, but it's within the same spirit. So this one might be something that we might appreciate the intent and that we want to reserve the opportunity to provide commentary or testimony.
Correct. So the board appreciated the intent, but expressed concerns regarding this measure. It is a fairly new compact, and the draft bill itself, the compact language, was quite concerning to the board due to some constitutional issues. But this specific measure creates a working group to study it. So you can continue if the board is inclined to appreciate the intent of this particular measure, so that the working group can study the measure and determine if the language or enactment of the compact is beneficial to the state.
Vote yes on that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, moving right on.
SB 442 SD1, relating to health. Authorizes advanced practice registered nurses in addition to physicians to practice medical aid in dying in accordance with their scope of practice and prescribing authority. Authorizes psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners in addition to psychiatrists, psychologists, and clinical social workers to provide counseling to a qualified patient. Reduces the mandatory waiting period between oral requests from 20 days to 5 days. Waives the mandatory waiting period for those terminally ill individuals not expected to survive the mandatory waiting period under certain conditions. Effective 12/31/2050.
This is a track.
Yes.
Everyone in agreement? I just need to see a set of nods. Okay, and in 32 minutes, this meeting has to end because of sunshine law, so there's light. All right, moving right on, Randy.
SB 450, relating to board meetings. Requires boards to use interactive conference technology to remotely conduct public meetings in conjunction with in-person meetings that allow for public participation. Requires boards to achieve certain recordings of meetings on their websites, or to archive, sorry.
So this is again for informational purposes, but also know that a measure similar to this was enacted and you guys are complying with it already.
So this is a track.
It is a track.
So just let me know if there's any concerns. Okay. All right. OIP, Randy.
All right, SB 719, relating to the Office of Information Practices, gives the Office of Information Practices the discretion to resolve disputes about open records or open meetings, either through an opinion or when the opinion would likely be in favor of the agency through informal written guidance. Appropriates funding for the Office of Information Practices to hire 2 new full-time positions for a legal assistant and attorney.
Track. Informational purposes.
Yeah, this is a track. Okay, I don't see any hands up. All right, records, Randy.
SB 720 SD1, relating to government records, as an exception to mandatory disclosure of government records for deliberative and pre-decisional government interagency or intra-agency records concerning an agency decision about a government action. from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2027 requires agencies to report their use of the exception to the Office of Information Practices.
This is for informational purposes and the board can track it.
I agree. And the only thing that caught my eye is on page 3, line 12. This paragraph does not apply to board packets as defined in section 92-7.5. So, yeah, so track.
Okay.
Okay. Other records, Randy.
All right, more records. SB 757. Did I skip one? That was it.
Nope, you're
Yep,
good.
sorry. Too many of these. Relating to emergency medical services. Requires the Department of Health to establish and implement a program to improve and increase support for emergency medical services in the state. Requires the Department of Health to submit reports to the legislature, appropriates funds.
I think this is a track. This came up, I think, because there's a time period to move it. There just were not enough personnel.
Correct.
I see people nodding, so, okay. All right, retention is a good, yeah.
SB 761, relating to the retention of healthcare providers. Beginning July 1st, 2024, provides a general excise tax exemption for medical services performed by healthcare providers.
Wait, again, this is one of those probably long overdue. But the thing is, passions and feelings and sentiments aside, this is not a board issue. It's a track.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to recluse myself on this one because I am super ultra passionate about this. I will
that's
keep
okay.
my mouth zipped.
Okay. All right.
So I believe last year, the board relayed that I would work with the association to ensure that you all would support it because it is a very important measure. Association.
Dr. Jaffe, did you have your hand up?
Well, I just, when it comes to saving money, we're all in support of it. But when it comes to public health, let's just track it. I'm just saying, it's a little egregious to me.
No. My point was, I thought it was long overdue. That was an editorial comment, but then I said track.
Correct.
Because it's not a
I'm all
board.
for tracking. I'm all for tracking.
Yeah, just like this next one is really interesting, but it's not a board issue either. Okay. Randy?
SB 870, relating to healthcare providers. Prohibits hospitals and healthcare facilities to permit or require healthcare providers to provide services for any period after the healthcare provider has been on duty for 16 consecutive hours or an aggregate of 80 hours during any period of 7 consecutive days until the healthcare provider takes at least 10 consecutive hours of time off duty. Clarifies that the terms and conditions of a collective bargaining agreement will prevail if in conflict with this prohibition. Defines healthcare facility, healthcare provider, and hospital.
So the board tracked this measure.
I mean, in essence, it'll make access worse, I think. But anyway, all right. Okay, moving right on. Randy?
SB 890, relating to healthcare. Prohibits the state from denying or interfering with a patient's right to choose to obtain an abortion or to terminate a pregnancy if the termination is necessary to protect the life or health of the patient. Repeals a criminal penalty for violations of certain abortion provisions. Clarifies that advanced practice registered nurses may provide abortion care. Clarifies that physicians, osteopathic physicians, and advanced practice registered nurses may administer a medication abortion via telehealth for a patient residing in the state.
So for the board members, information, SB 1 passed out and was enacted last year, which had similar language. Section 2 directly applies to the board, which amends 453-16. The board supported the intent of the measure last year. But again, a similar measure was enacted as Senate Bill 1, Act something. Okay.
thoughts? Do you want to just stick with that? Yeah, I don't see any dissenting. All right, so we'll move on.
SB 896 SD1 relating to reproductive health care. Prohibits a covered entity from disclosing communication or information relating to reproductive health care services. Prohibits the issuance of a subpoena in connection with an out-of-state proceeding relating to reproductive health care services legally performed in the state. Prohibits agencies from providing information or expending resources in the furtherance of interstate investigations or proceedings relating to reproductive health care services. Prohibits the state from penalizing, prosecuting, or otherwise taking adverse action based on pregnancy outcomes or aiding or assisting a pregnant individual with accessing reproductive health care services. Requires the governor to deny any demand for surrender of a person charged with a crime involving reproductive health care services unless the conduct constitutes a crime in the state. Enumerates laws contrary to public policy and prohibits their application as rules of decisions in the courts. Prohibits the issuance of a summons for persons to testify in another state with regard to lawful reproductive health care services. Clarifies under various licensing statutes that the provision or assistance in receipt or provision of medical, surgical, pharmaceutical, counseling, or referral services relating to the human reproductive system cannot form a basis for disciplinary action. Prohibits the enforcement of a judgment or order arising from a foreign penal civil action or other penal law with respect to reproductive healthcare services, effective 12/31/2050.
So again, this measure was, the language from this measure was placed into, and I apologize if it's the wrong Senate bill, but I believe it was Senate Bill 1 last year, and it was enacted. And the board supported it.
Yeah, and the rationale, just to point out, because people might think, well, termination of pregnancy, contraception, but really the core piece where the board would be involved is on page 20 and 22. That talks about licensure and imposition of conditions on licensure, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where the board then weighs in, because it has to do with sanctioning and licensure. So that, brought in the regulatory component of the board. Okay.
Right.
So we don't have to make any determination on that one, right, Alani?
No, I mean, the
That's
bill is.
done, that's done already.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, moving on, Randy.
SB 899, relating to health. Authorizes advanced practice registered nurses to practice medical aid in dying or provide counseling to a qualified patient. Amends the mandatory waiting period between oral requests and the provision of a prescription.
Track.
This is not a board issue. Okay, next.
SB 912, relating to child abuse reporting. Establishes that the exemption from mandatory reporting by members of the clergy does not apply when the clergy member believes that there is a substantial risk that child abuse or neglect that is especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, manifesting exceptional depravity may occur in the reasonably foreseeable future.
I think this is a track. We might have strong feelings on this one too, actually. All right, moving on.
SB 919, relating to workers' compensation. Requires the independent medical examination and permanent impairment rating examination of an injured employee under the workers' compensation law to be conducted by a qualified chiropractor or physician selected by the mutual agreement of the parties and paid for by the employer. In absence of a mutual agreement, requires the Director of Labor and Industrial Relations to appoint a duly qualified and impartial chiropractor or physician to be paid by the employer.
So this measure is being brought to you because it does reference chapter 453 on pages 3, 4, 3, and 4. So I believe to remain consistent with past positions, The board would monitor these measures, but if they change the definition of the practice of medicine, at that point, you would provide comments to recommend that the definitions align with one another. So what is in their statute, chapter 386, and the practice of medicine in 453. Those were your comments in
I
the.
think that's brought up more on page 4, lines 3, 4, and 5. That's where you'll see it. So these are the ones, again, the board weighs in because it has to do with scope of practice that's codified under our statutes. Okay, so should we take the same position? Dr. Pat, did you have a question? Oh, okay. All right, so we'll take the same position. Okay, next one, minors.
SB 955, relating to medical care for minors. Authorizes licensed osteopathic physicians and physician assistants, in addition to physicians and advanced practice registered nurses, to provide minor initiated medical care and services. Requires the licensed healthcare provider to ensure that the covered entity has been notified that minor initiated medical care and services should not be disclosed. Requires the covered entity to have policies and procedures established to maintain non-disclosure of the minor initiated medical care and services to the minor's parent or legal guardian. Authorizes the licensed healthcare provider to submit a claim to the covered entity for the provision of minor initiated medical care and services.
So even if it references are, 453, it just references it only within the context of what the definition of a physician, osteopathic physician, or physician assistant, and then 457 for advanced practice nursing. But other than that, it just doesn't have an impact on our statutes one way or another. So this would be a track.
Yeah.
All right, telehealth.
SB 1038 SD2, relating to telehealth. Temporarily allows for the reimbursement of services provided through telehealth via an interactive telecommunications system and two-way real-time audio-only communications in certain circumstances. Defines interactive telecommunications system, effective 12/31/20.
So this measure directly amends the insurance codes. So you'd have to defer to the insurance commissioner on his position.
Okay, and I think we'll take that position, right? Unless there's any dissension. All right. Okay, Randy, we got like 7 more left.
My voice is about to go. SB 1215 SD2 HD1, relating to healthcare preceptors. Amends the preceptor tax credit law to expand access to the program and to make it easier for preceptors to access tax credits under the program. Adds the director of health to the preceptor credit assurance committee, effective 12/31.
Okay, and Gary, if you can just chair this part of it, I'm going to recuse for obvious reasons.
Okay, this seems even less relevant to our relatively narrow scope on the board. So Alani, would tracking this be appropriate?
That would be appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay, right, moving right on.
SB 1253 SD1, relating to the Office of Information Practices. Defines guidance, opinion, and ruling. Requires the director of the Office of Information Practices to provide either a ruling or guidance in writing on open records, responses, and open meetings complaints.
So this is just being provided to you for informational purposes. If a hearing is scheduled, I will submit testimony on behalf of the entire division versus the board.
Okay, so this sounds like
a track.
A track.
Yeah.
Okay, Randy, the next one sounds like Controlled Substances Division. Go for it.
SB 1395, relating to the Uniform Controlled Substances Act. Updates the Uniform Controlled Substances Act, Chapter 329, Hawaii Revised Statutes, to make it consistent with amendments in the federal controlled substances law as required by section 329-11 Hawaii revised statutes.
Does everybody find if we defer to the Hawaii controlled substances?
I think that would be
Okay. All right.
SB 1396 relating to the Uniform Controlled Substances Act, amends section 4 of Act 153, Session Laws of Hawaii 2018 to make permanent the requirements under section 329-38 .2 Hawaii revised statutes to check the electronic prescription accountability system in certain situations as enumerated.
Okay, so again, shall we defer this to our narcotics division, narcotics enforcement department? All right. Two more left.
SB
So
one.
are we tracking or just deferring? Because, you know, we deal with this a lot with our decision-making for substance use disorder physicians.
We can track, but again, Rico would be the one that would actually be the first line, not us. Yeah.
Correct.
So the wisdom of the group, would we want to track this or just stick with the deferral to the narcotics enforcement division?
I can track it on your behalf.
Uh-huh.
And I'll just track it on your behalf and I'll bring it back to the board if it directly impacts your chapter.
Okay, all right, that's great. Okay, thank you. All right, Randy.
SB 1397 relating to the electronic prescription accountability system. In subsection 329-101D Hawaii revised statutes to require that a dispenser of a controlled substance report the filling of a controlled substance prescription and the dispensing of drug samples to the state's electronic prescription accountability system at least once every day. Or a report of 0 to be reported not less than once every 7 days if no controlled substances prescriptions are filled or drug samples are dispensed.
I think we should defer this to the NED.
Thank you.
Okay, narcotic enforcement division. Okay, all right. Last one. I know it's number 30 something.
SB.
Doesn't he have the last?
There's a couple more.
But the bills are in here.
Sorry. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, SB 1491 relating to reproductive health care services. Prohibits with certain exceptions any state agency or political subdivision from providing private information regarding or authorizing an arrest warrant based on the receipt or provision of or assistance with reproductive health care services that are lawful in the state. Requires the Department of Health to maintain on its website information about access to abortion in the state, including current information about state law. Requires the Director of Commerce and Consumer Affairs to assess and report to the legislature on any policy changes or legislation needed to ensure that no person is disqualified from licensure or subject to professional discipline based on the lawful receipt or provision of or assistance with reproductive healthcare services in the state.
So this one, because of section 4, page 6, this one we probably should track with the opportunity to provide testimony, huh? Because the references is the DCCA.
That is correct. And actually, Rico would most likely take the lead on this measure. But I believe this language was also included in that Senate Bill 1.
Okay, you said there were more. This is all I had in my packet.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the bills were not included in the packet. So page 5 of your legislative tracking sheet will have to be deferred until February 8th. But just know that these measures, again, were all heard last year or introduced last year. So we'll put it on the February 8th agenda. Okay.
All right. Okay, so moving right on, in our last 10 minutes, board holdovers, appointments, and reappointments. So I think there's 4 of us that are going up for reappointment, right?
So that is correct. I emailed you the individuals who are considered holdovers. That means your term, your first term expired on June 30th, 2023. To be reappointed to the board, and that's Dr. Takanishi, Mr. Munn, Dr. Jaffe, and Dr. Fong. To be reappointed to the board and to be considered for reappointment, you do need to reapply. I provided you the link to the boards and commissions website. If you've already done so, can you please forward me your confirmation? Dr. Jaffe, I have your confirmation on file, and possibly Dr. Takanishi. Yeah, and then Dr. Dow, your full 8 years expires June 30th of this year.
Oh,
Okay.
Has it been 8 years already?
I believe so. Is that correct?
Oh my God.
I want to say you're at 8 this year.
You
But
will.
I'll
Yes.
confirm that with you later. Okay.
right.
That's-
You also go on into your executive officer report and virtual board meetings.
So I just wanted to inform the board so you're not surprised next month or possibly in March. But pursuant to Act 125 Session Laws of Hawaii, the boards are encouraged to maintain records of board meetings on the board's website, regardless of whether the written minutes of the meeting have been posted, required to provide the state archives with a copy of any recording of a board meeting before removing the recording from the board's website, and required to include a link to the electronic audio or video recording in the written minutes if available online. Given this new law, the board meetings will be held using Zoom meetings only. So this will occur in either February or March, depending on when we can get the equipment up and running. We will no longer use Teams, so we'll let you know. But we will no longer use Teams for adjudicatory session or executive session. In addition to that, I forgot what I was going to say, but that's pretty much it. So.
Okay. Any questions for Alani?
I do remember, our meetings, because you hold hybrid meetings, will most likely be recorded by Olelo and posted to their website. Okay,
Wait, so does that mean it's gonna get posted on YouTube?
and YouTube as well. So,
Wow.
yes.
All right, I'm gonna have to watch my decorum then.
I think
Okay.
we will.
All right. Okay, so the really the last of our business before our adjournment is the appointment of a commissioner to the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact Commission. And so we're looking for one more volunteer to serve on that.
So Dr. Jaffe was appointed about 2 meetings ago. As you can see on your agenda, you can also appoint an executive director or executive officer. So we now have 2 executive officers on the board. If the board would like to appoint the second executive officer, they may do so, but it's really up to the board members.
Are there any volunteers?
Can you tell me the role again? I'm sorry, so I'm clear what's being asked of that person?
Well, I spoke to I spoke to one of the commissioners of this. There's 40 states involved with this. And what the requirement will be is that you have to go to 1 virtual meeting per year and 1 in-person meeting per year to be a commissioner. This year's meeting is in Phoenix in November. And you will be assigned a committee. For example, they want to put me on the IT committee to help with some of the informatics that go on. There's a handbook that describes what this is all about. And so I'm still getting my feet wet, but at least from a work added perspective, you're going to have to go to at least 2 meetings per year, 1 in person.
And I think don't they reimburse for the in-person one though?
I didn't get that far with them.
Oh, okay.
I believe they do. You're correct. They do.
Okay. If we have no volunteers, we monthly recurring old business. Okay. All right, so we're getting close to 4:30. Want to thank you again. We actually went through over 30 some odd, I lost count already, 30 some odd bills. And we had some tough applications, tough adjudicatory decisions. Thank you again, and again, Happy New Year. And so our next meeting is on February 8th. And so that information, of course, will be sent out to us in advance of the meeting. So we'll have ample opportunity to review the packet. So any closing comments before we adjourn for the month? Okay. Thank you again to the staff, and congratulations to Dr. Jerry Young on her new role. Close one chapter and open another. All right. And Dr. Dow, we can still squeeze out 5 more months from you. So, and we're going to do it. All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice rest of your week and month. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alani, can I ask you a quick question?
Can I call you?
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Bye.